and I turn to my right, and I see a longtime friend who's kind enough to hang out with us here in studio in Los Angeles, California, in hour number 3. My longtime colleague and now one of the voices of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Charley Steiner. Good to see you, Charlie.
Good to see you, Rich.
And it's just really funny how life works, because it just dawned on me the other day that it was the 30-year anniversary. It crossed my timeline on Twitter of Carl Lewis singing the national anthem 30 years ago. And then the day after, your, if you will, coverage of it on SportsCenter, leading to one of the greatest giggle fits of all time. And that went totally viral on Twitter. And then you text me like 2 days later, and I'm like, let's come in and let's chop it up. And now here you are. It's amazing.
Well, first, my ankle is good.
Okay. Did you ever broadcast with a high ankle sprain, Charlie? Did you ever do that? Has that ever happened to you? Has that ever
yes.
happened? Okay. You were
but you know, the great ones gut it out. You play in pain, as you did with your ACL. I mean,
yes,
that's what you have to do.
Yep.
If you're going to make it in this business with any sort of longevity, you just tee it up, let her rip, and my ankle is good to go.
I love it. Fantastic.
I played Little League ball, Central Proctology on Long Island. And
that's quite a sponsorship right there.
Yes, it was.
Now, is it?
Yes, and we were.
You finished last?
Yes, we didn't win a game. Didn't win a game.
You were poopy?
We got our asses kicked every day.
Here you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, I guess while we're on that subject matter,
good transition.
No, because you used a line years ago that you referred to one of the producers at the Worldwide Leader in Sports, whose work you didn't really appreciate, to be honest. You said he couldn't find his own ass if you handed him a box of Charmin in both his hands.
Box of Charmin and a GPS. And as I recall,
that's one of the greatest lines ever.
As I recall, there was nobody who came to his defense.
It was one of the greatest lines. I'm like, he couldn't find his own ass if you gave him a box of Charmin in both his hands. That's what you said, and it was really just funny. At any rate, when you saw the fact that it's been 30 years since
it blew me away. Actually, I got a text the night before from one of the producers who was in fact quite good, Jerry Madelon.
Oh, Jerry, Jerry, of course.
Jerry was in fact the producer of that show that night. And so I got a text the night before notifying me it was the 30th anniversary, which was the first. And then it was like, geez. And then you're like Citizen Kane. You put it out into the internet world.
Yes.
And it just, it took off.
It did.
I was
love it still.
astonished.
People still love it. So when you heard Carl Lewis's walk me through when this hit the SportsCenter newsroom.
It began that morning.
Yeah.
I was driving in to Bristol. We had a 7 o'clock show, and inexplicably we had editorial meetings at 10 a.m. for no apparent reason other than. And so we're sitting around, and Jack Edwards happened to be anchoring with me that night.
Yes.
Normally it was Bob and Robin.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jack unmercifully drew the short straw that night, apparently. So I'm driving in, and I hear on WFAN like 10 seconds of this thing. And it's this editorial meeting, we just talk about what we're going to talk about that night.
Yes.
And I told him I heard this thing. Maybe we have video of it. Okay. So somebody goes downstairs, and damned if there wasn't video of the whole thing. And they used to give me what they called the kicker, the last story of the show, which was,
7:58 in the evening after a 7 o'clock show.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And so try to end on a upbeat. And so now we see the whole thing. So it's like, this is god awful, but there's something that we can do with this. And going in, basically, we're going to condense it for your own good. Here it is. Now, in the old days at ESPN, before there were offices and stuff, we had these little, just little
cubicles, right?
Cubicles, that's the word.
Yeah.
And my cubicle happened to be next to a bank of audio were back when they threw in cartridges.
Yes, that's right.
And so,
Right?
Cart machines.
yes,
Yeah.
where you put the cartridge.
Yep.
And so now people are hearing about this all day. And they walk in and say, we got to hear this Carl Lewis thing. And I'm typing the show for that night, and I probably heard it 25, 30 times. And I'm thinking,
Uh-oh.
the uh-oh sells it. The uh-oh sells it. And so now I'm laughing every time. And I'm figuring by 7:58 or whatever time it was, I would have been laughed out.
No doubt.
You would think.
You want to think?
Well, it didn't turn out that way. So, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem, and people watch it. Now, in the studio, which was considerably smaller than your spacious digs here,
yeah.
we had 3 cameramen, had a stage manager,
Yeah.
and a guy who ran the
Prompter. Yeah, the prompter operator.
and Jack. Now, they are all collectively losing it, and I am kind of leading the parade. And I'm thinking, well, okay, by the time it is over, I'll be fine. I wasn't.
You were not laughed out, and I think you just gave the voice of what everybody at home was doing. You know,
guess, and I said to somebody, it was like being in the back row when a substitute teacher was in, and you're holding it in and you're holding it in until you can't, and 2 minutes later you're in the principal's office. Well, boogers are flying out of my nose, spit's coming out of my, and I have lost it. And now I'm thinking, as I'm embarrassing myself, can I save this? And I lean back in the chair, and I don't know where it came from, but the Francis Scott off-key line, it was like intervention
that
from
wasn't
God.
scripted. That was
It popped into my head as I'm leaning back.
Wow.
Francis Scott off key.
And so, I mean, it was kick saving a beauty.
That's right.
And so now,
Oh my gosh.
Perfect.
and so now this show is over. And I'm thinking, so is my career. And we used to go upstairs into that tiny little
yeah,
newsroom,
I
and you
remember
would
that.
remove your IFB.
Yes.
You put it. We didn't have spacious desks or anything. You had a drawer.
Yeah.
And you put it in the drawer. And so I'm walking into the room. The entire newsroom is hysterically laughing. But it was the longest walk from the studio to the newsroom because I'm thinking, I'm dead. I'm fired.
You have no
This
idea
is
how it's
over.
received. Yeah,
I'm over.
exactly. Yeah.
And then they are all laughing. And at the end of the day, it turned out all right. And that night, I think Keith and Dan did the 11.
Yeah.
They replayed the entire segment from the 7.
Of you?
Yes,
Of you?
the entire thing.
So the big show.
The big show. I was the big show part 2. And
oh my God.
and now 30 years have come and gone.
Yeah.
And Carl Lewis was one of the elite athletes of the 20th century.
There's no question.
He was drafted in the 10th round in 1984 in the NBA.
I didn't know that.
And he, sadly, for a generation, this is what people think about for Carl. And I really feel awful about that, but it wasn't my fault. It really wasn't my fault.
The meaning that he just knew that the register that he started the song that he couldn't
Midway
get
through,
And the Rockets.
Well, and then the other thing that struck me was Derek Coleman,
Yes.
who's biting.
I'm watching it right now. It's amazing.
I'm just laughing. Oh my God.
What's remarkable?
The giggle fest.
So again, what I must tell you, it was extremely liberating for me because I was relatively new to television. I've been at ESPN for 3 years, but basically I was a radio guy.
Right.
I still am. And So I completely lost it. I was as naked as a human being with clothes on could be. And I survived, and it was okay, and there was like a natural reaction to it. And then over the years, when I found things funny, because I was so liberated from that moment, I could laugh about Tanya Harding.
Oh, my God.
Or
by the way,
Mike Tyson, any of them.
The Tanya Harding, because that's the other giggle moment for you. And the Tanya Harding, because it was once you got divorced, right?
Right.
And her ex got the tools.
Pickup truck, and she got the tool chest. and
you're like going through the divorce settlement.
Yeah.
Who got what? And she got
the tool chest.
And you could.
And is that not funny? And so because of Carl Lewis,
I can't get it.
I could then.
Oh my God!
You know, and Mitch Blood Green and the Haberdasher.
Oh.
And the other one was
There's a Kerry Wood one.
Kerry
too.
Wood,
Yeah.
his last known relief appearance when he got caught relieving himself, and he told the cop, "Not now. I'm not finished yet." So when you write that stuff, I mean, it's pure gold. And
it writes itself.
Yes. And so that is why they used to give me the kicker stories to end shows.
Oh my God.
And yeah,
those are the days.
and so
man.
the Kerry Wood thing was kind of fun because he was a rookie. He was a rookie sensation. And I have lost it over his last known relief appearance. He was a starter at the time. Show's over. I come back upstairs, and I get a call from Mark Grace. They're in Arizona spring training.
Yeah.
He said, Gary's on the phone, like to talk to you. And all we did was laugh. He loved it. And we became friends over the years because
of that.
Yeah.
I
Carl and I, not so much.
There was one moment Stuart and I were giggling, and we felt, like we had license to finish the segment out that way because of you. And you kind of set the tone. And it was a highlight of a Q school competition. And the winners are going to obviously get their tour card. And it was, I don't know why, we hadn't seen the highlight yet. It was handed to us. It was 1 in the morning, whatever. It just ended on the West Coast or something, and we hadn't seen it yet. And it was a golfer who was in shorts, which was just odd to see anyway. He had to have been pushing about 300 pounds too. So you don't believe like this guy is a professional golfer in any way, or trying for his tour card. And the highlight was he kept missing a short gimme putt and wound up quadruple bogeying. And once he finally holed out, he grabbed the golf ball and with his other hand flipped the bird to the crowd. And we just didn't see that one coming. Right. And we just, both of us, giggled. And there were like 4 more shots on the shot sheet to finish out. And we couldn't get through it. Just couldn't get through it. And wound up just throw to break.
So you didn't see it coming.
Carl
Lewis. I saw it all day.
Well, and that might be part of why you found it so funny is that it's all day and you thought like you were done.
I'm cool.
You're cool. Yeah. And then
until
you weren't.
No.
I love
evidently.
that stuff, man.
It blows me away that 30 years people still remember it and talk about it.
Look at that picture. I think this is 97 or 98. There I am in the back row next to Gary Miller, Meat, as he was known.
Gary Miller,
because his calls on baseball games, baseball highlights, and he is Meat.
Meat
at the plate. He's out. He's Meat. There's Stu.
Dan, Steve.
Look at Dan, Steve, Bob Stevens, who took over Keith's spot on the Big Show. Remember that?
Oof.
One night, and we were all stunned because Keith went to Shea Stadium for the Jackie Robinson night.
Okay.
And so he took over for that one night.
Look at Chris McKendry's now big
right
tennis star. Mike
Tirico,
Reese,
Larry
Beal. Aloha means goodbye.
There's Berman and Robin sitting on the chairs, and there's LC and you, man, next to Stu. What a time.
We were talking during the break. Look at that group. We didn't know it at the time, that collectively was a pretty damn talented group. We were just a bunch of jabokes doing television in Connecticut.
Yeah.
But then in retrospect, looking at that picture then and where everybody has gone since then is quite a testament to what SportsCenter and ESPN was. What is that? That's what, 25 years ago?
A little bit. Yeah, 25, yeah.
That's 25 years.
Right, and Carl Lewis was 30, and then obviously, you know, Berman and Bob Lee before all that, Tom Mees, may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
You know, and so many others.
We all just showed up seemingly at one time. You know, ESPN and SportsCenter was trying to find its way when I got there in '88, and then
just look at that set too. I love the font of the ESPN and the SportsCenter. It's for so many people, it's their childhood, and it blows me away that I am a child there in that photograph. It's unbelievable. Back here on our radio show and on the Roku channel as well. Charley Steiner is here. We just showed a photograph from 1997 and how being in the SportsCenter heyday is such a I cherish it that I was there.
It's a foundation to what we went on to do and become. And again, I'd never had any inkling of ever being on television.
TV.
Yeah, never. But they were trying new stuff,
right?
Because by '88, SportsCenter was really teetering, and they brought in, of course, John Walsh, the legendary editor, managing editor, and they
Rolling Stone, right? And
Rolling Stone, Newsday, Washington Post.
Right.
Either that, he was really great, or he couldn't hold a job. Whatever it was, he was always at great places.
Yes.
But he was the mastermind behind that SportsCenter. And they experimented. They brought in people that hadn't done it before.
There you are with Berman right up there in the old
that's
school
when
days.
we did one of the commercials for the 60s.
That's right. Yeah. Right. A
And they
SportsCenter of the
gave Boomer
60s.
a very bad wig.
I just remember, again, when I walked in the door there, I was 26 in 1996. And I just remember walking in there, and it was everybody who I'd seen on television. And now you guys are automatically my colleagues, and I was blown away by that. And it was you, Bob Lee, and Robin Roberts doing the early SportsCenter, the early evening SportsCenter. I know you said it was 7 when the Carl Lewis stuff happened 30 years ago. When I first arrived there, it was 6 o'clock SportsCenter.
It varied from
Eastern.
6, 6:30, 7.
It had kind of fixed at 6 o'clock when I walked in the door. And it was Dan and Keith on the big show.
Right.
And then the evening show, the 2 a.m. SportsCenter or 2:30 a.m. SportsCenter when I first arrived there was, the spot where Kilborn was doing his thing and Brett Haber was there and Carl Ravitch. Tirico had kind of already moved out and started doing other things.
All right.
And he would then come back every now and then. And I did a few SportsCenters with him. And Linda Cohn was doing a ton of shows. And then they hooked Stuart and I up together, and we kind of did that over and over again for 6 years.
What was so wonderful about it, and you and Stuart had it, Bob and I, and Bob and Robin and I had it. Yeah. Bob and Robin are friends of mine to this day. And chemistry happens. You can't invent it. You can't create it. Either you have it or you don't. You guys had it. We had it.
Dan and Keith sure had it.
Yeah, it was sometimes combustible chemistry.
But that is part of what I think also made it so great is that on occasion we were skating on the edge.
Yes.
We were on the razor's edge.
You know what also, in retrospect, I think made that group happen when it did? The fact that we were in Bristol, Connecticut. There was nothing else. We were one another's families.
Yes.
Because there was nothing else to do. There was no place else to go. There were like 2 movie theaters within a country mile or country miles. And so we were this family, occasionally dysfunctional, but a family that, again, in retrospect, was far more talented than I ever gave it credit for when we were there.
And it also met a certain time, too, because I have given this a lot of thought. It was before... these phones,
absolutely.
And it was before, the internet was. I'll be honest. I mean, I know I'm dating myself, but the internet was just getting started, and
it was a non-factor. at that point.
Correct. And I know management knew that this was going to be something they needed to mine, all right, and get, ESPNgo.com going, right? Yeah. And they had their own phones too. But before all of that, people were still tuning into SportsCenter to see something maybe for the first time or for the only time after seeing it live. And we were there to tell them the story.
They watched our show, the early show, Bob and Robin and I, to find out what they had missed during the day.
Right.
They turned into Keith and Dan to watch the highlights of what had transpired because, again, there was not that wide panoply of games to watch because there weren't. And so at least we were able to take in the video and edit them up. And then the late show was kind of a combination of the two. And I remember what a big deal it was when they started to re-air the 2:30. And the only reason they did that was in the morning at 8 a.m., there was Body by Jake.
That's right, Jake Steiner.
Who I see all the time.
Right.
And so they had those kinds of shows in the morning, and somebody went up to Steve Bornstein, who was the president of the network at the time, and said, what do we need this Body by Jake nonsense for? Why not some highlights? And with that, the re-airs began.
And then you started getting earlier and earlier, believe it or not, because Steve Bornstein wanted to have something to watch while he was doing his workouts in the morning.
Exactly,
and he had
right.
enough swing to say, hey, call up the programming department, put it on earlier and earlier.
And that's what they did.
Exactly. And I wound up, because I did those sports centers in the middle of the night and got re-aired throughout from 6 a.m. to 1 in the afternoon.
Right.
I had the most, even probably to this day, the most exposure of my career while I was asleep. Out like a light at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, and it was unreal. I still have people coming up to me today, Charlie, saying, I
woke up with you.
I woke up. I went, or the one that really is the mind blower is I watched you and Stu before getting on the bus to go to school.
Oh.
I get that a lot, but I love it. I know obviously it makes me feel older, but there's nothing like that. I mean, it's a connection that I don't know, that I would love to replicate here every day, and I hope that I do, with people who take in the show and listen to it and watch it, that they feel like what we're saying is a wink and a nod to them.
Yes.
And if they don't get it, they know they might be missing out on something and want to.
And if they don't get it, you've humored yourself.
What I say the other day to you, I'm like, at least I'm making myself laugh right here.
That's what it's all about.
And that's what it is. And now, having been around for so long, young broadcasters, we just hired Stephen Nelson to add to the TV crew. Talked to him the other day, and, he grew up watching. Mm-hmm. I mean, really grew up. He was preteen watching. And so, again, we were lucky. We were just at a time where ESPN and SportsCenter grew exponentially, and we were just on the rocket ship.
And having fun.
Yeah,
having
fun. Got away with it.
Charley Steiner here on the Rich Eisen Show. And you just mentioned, Steve Nelson says, I used to watch you, and you could have said that same thing to Vin. I'm sure you did for all those years. You got a good Scully story? I know that I'm asking to choose one here, but you got a good Vin story, Charlie?
I'll tell you what. When he passed away in August, it really hit me. Yeah. It hit me hard. He was really my second dad, because he was the guy that I grew up wanting to be like. He was the guy that I listened to when I was 7 years old, and they were the Brooklyn Dodgers. There are two things. One, Vin, like me, or me like Vin, not comfortable in public settings. Just, if he wants to get in, get out, and move on. Mm-hmm. And I asked him about that once, and he said, it really, when I'm in a public setting, it's 4 B's. Oh, what are the 4 B's? Be there, be early, be seen, be gone. Works for me. And then somebody had asked me to write a book, 10, 12 years ago. And I was really, for the same reason, I just don't like that attention all that much. And I said, you never wrote a book. And why's that? And he said, it boils down to the 3 E's. Oh, and what are the 3 E's? I have neither the energy, the ego, or the economic need. I said, good. And so those pearls of wisdom that I was able to get
amazing.
from Vin over the years, things like that, he is embedded in me.
And I do, miss him, and that has no, nothing born out of just the old school that we'll never see again. I don't think we'll never see. Will we ever see another broadcast where management says we're going to blow off half of a commercial break just to have you come back, turn your back to the field, look at the camera, and tell a story? That's what we're going to do. And that's what he did. And it felt like we were talking about a connection that people have with a listener or a viewer. I mean, nobody had a bond quite like him with anybody that listened to him.
He was as comfortable in his own skin as anybody I've ever met. He had a presence. And, there's so many things about which we were similar. There are many things we were different. He never, in a day in his life, wore a pair of blue jeans. Never once. I, of course, live in blue jeans. I got dressed up for you. I've got black jeans.
I appreciate that.
Today.
Otherwise, you're
More
forever
formal.
in blue jeans.
Yes,
Understood.
Good. Thank you, Neil.
Yeah.
Diamond. And so he would look at me and my jeans and give me one of those. But it was almost a father-son wonderful relationship for which I was enormously lucky. Rick Monday, me, Billy DeLury, who came over from Brooklyn with Vin, and the 4 of us would have lunch or dinner before every game. And mathematically, we had upwards of 1,000 dinners, the 4 of us, just talking about life and stuff and not always baseball. And so just being around him and watching how he conducted himself. He was just as comfortable in his own skin as anybody I've ever met.
Charley Steiner here. A few more minutes left with Charley here in studio on the Rich Eisen Show. When does Charley Steiner and Catchers report? When does that happen?
They before me.
Day before you?
They long before me.
Okay, so
they show up generally around Valentine's Day.
Okay, here we go.
Opening day
Right
is
around
I
the
think
corner.
March 31st.
right around the corner.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
But
The Padres seem to have joined this battle, Charley.
they're good. They're good.
They're
the
spending-
Dodgers have some questions this year going.
What are your questions?
Who's playing second, short, third, left, and center?
Those are a lot of questions.
Who's closing? What does the rotation look like? Bring it on. But this is one of those, I think, years of transition, and we'll see how it plays out. Trey Turner is gone. Justin Turner is gone. A couple of the starters are gone.
Are they resetting their
It would appear.
their luxury tax? Because
It would
Trey Turner
appear.
to me is worth the money to go overspend on him.
Trey Turner.
Trey Turner.
I don't think he wanted to be here.
Is that it?
I think Trey Turner.
You want to back east?
Yeah.
Okay.
His wife is from New Jersey.
Okay.
He is from Virginia. And they were, and so Philadelphia just seemed to be the perfect landing spot for him. And again, all this money now, players can really make a decision more than ever about lifestyle rather than having to extend the extra dollar. I think they just wanted to be on the East Coast. And by the way, they go to a real good team.
They sure do. They sure do. You're defending National League champion Philadelphia
Boy,
Phillies.
and they were fun down the stretch.
They were.
They were great.
I know. So we haven't spoken about this yet. You're a perfect person to chop it up with. I don't know. I always am hesitant to complain about somebody making a Hall of Fame because it is such a remarkable personal journey capper for that individual.
Sure.
But I never once watched Scott Rolen and thought to myself, that is a guy who's going to Cooperstown. Never.
I'm happy to say I'm on the other side.
Okay, so
And I will tell you why.
go for it.
Set all the numbers aside. The fact that he was a really solid, good third baseman.
Right.
September the 17th, 2001, 6 days after 9/11. I am assigned to do the first game back, the Phillies and the Braves at Veterans Stadium. And none of us were sure of the appropriateness of being there. What are we supposed to feel like? And I took the train down from New Haven to Philly, and I'm going through the tunnel and off to the left, what remained of the Twin Towers still smoldering. Get to Philly, I don't know, about 11 o'clock in the morning. And again, nobody was traveling to speak of. And get to the hotel, and then I just go to the ballpark. And I'm there about noon, 1 o'clock. And a bunch of players, they're not even dressed yet. They're just walking around. Everybody, it's suspended animation. Nobody knows quite how to feel. And so Scott and I are sitting in the stands behind the first base dugout, still in our street clothes, and asking each other, how do you feel? Should we even be here?
Right.
And nobody quite knew. There was nothing to base it on. And he said, I don't feel right, but we got to play. He had 2 home runs that night, and the Phillies won the game. To me, in that moment, as a human being,
yes,
he became a Hall of Famer. And then he had a very substantial career, and I was only 17, 18 third basemen have ever been inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was kind of a jarring number. But that day, I became a Scott Rolen fan for life. And whenever we see each other, we haven't.
Well, I mean, it's a terrific story, a remarkable story. And yes, like I see the wins above replacement statistics, that he's a top 5 wins above replacement.
I don't get that.
No, I don't know the WAR stuff either.
Yeah.
I just know, watching them, I thought he was a terrific baseball player, but I just did not think I was watching somebody who was generationally brilliant and is going to be in the same room as, Ruth,
he
Gehrig,
was
and what have you.
generationally consistent. He was really good.
But Hall of Fame, you know what I mean? Like, and of course, I'm totally biased. I think Mattingly is a terrific ball player. Even I am understanding that he is a borderline, if not Hall of Fame player. But if Rolen and Harold Baines are in, then that's where I'm going with this.
And I think the precedent setter was Bill Mazeroski, who was a terrific defensive second baseman. Period. But was he a Hall of Famer? Probably not.
Hit a great home run.
Yes, he did, and it cost me $1, and it cost me a week's allowance. When you got time for a story?
Sure.
I'll give you a story. So Mazeroski hits the home run. It's 1960. I'm 11 years old, and I was picked up every Thursday or whatever day it was by my piano teacher from Lindner Place School. And she was going to drive me to my house where my mom bought a piano so I could learn to play the piano, which I didn't want to do. And on this particular day, she picks me up. I said, can I have the day off? It's the 7th game of the World Series.
Yeah.
No. So I made a bet, $1, with a friend of mine, little Ronnie Held from down the street. $1 was like 20 packs of baseball cards.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, that's a lot of dough. And I had the Yankees. So I'm playing on top of Old Smoky. Bum, 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 bum.
That was your tune?
That's what I was working that day. I was Jerry Lee Lewis on top. So now, bum, 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 bum. Doorbell rings. Ronnie Held comes running into the house back in the day when you could run into other people's houses. The Pirates won. The Pirates won. Mazeroski hit a home run. That was long before walk-off. Mazeroski hit a home run. I knew 2 curse words. And my piano teacher got both of them at high volume. That was the end of my piano playing career. Fast forward now to the 80s, 90s. I meet Mazeroski for the first time.
Oh, this is great.
And I tell him he cost me 20 packs of baseball cards, a week's worth of allowance, because you hit the home run, and I'm playing on top of Old Smokey. I meet him subsequent times. Every time I saw him, he would go, dun, 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 dun. So Mazeroski, for me, will never be a Hall of Famer. It cost me $1.
Charley Steiner, you're the best, man. Thanks for coming in here. I'd love to have you every now and then if you just want to come here and hang out and just tell more stories. And
I'm a lonely guy.
No, you're not. You're not at all.
Happy to.